All right, we are live. Hello, everybody. Let me get a couple things situated here, and then we will get started a little bit early. And as always, thank you for joining. If you're watching this live tonight, remember you can always support this channel by going to patreon.com/Hemant. And if you want to just subscribe for free, you can get the articles at friendlyatheist.com. I appreciate that. We have Den here tonight, as always, who's helping out with moderation. So if you leave comments in YouTube, I will get them. He'll make sure I see the ones I need to see in between stories. So leave them there. And why are we starting early? Because there's a Cubs game tonight. And on the off chance they don't lose tonight, I would like to see it. So whatever, we'll find out. Let me get started. Let me get started by talking about the 10 Commandments in public schools. I know I've done a lot of videos about this issue, but there was a big update this week, and it could be kind of devastating. And I'm not quite sure what to make of it yet, but let me give you the rundown of where we're at with all these laws trying to shove the 10 Commandments posters in public schools. So, Louisiana passed a law to put the 10 Commandments in schools, and a judge, federal district court judge, weighed in on it and basically said, this is absolutely unconstitutional. So no school in Louisiana gets to put these up. And that was wonderful news. Louisiana's Republican leaders, they appealed that decision, and a 3-judge panel on the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals said, yeah, what the other guy said. Like, they affirmed that earlier decision saying it was unconstitutional. And that was from the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. That was a big deal. They're usually very conservative, but this was a good 3-judge panel. They said, no, we're good with saying this is not okay. So great news all around. Arkansas, they passed their version of this law and they got sued over it. And what happened in Arkansas is that a federal district court judge said, this is unconstitutional, but because you need an answer from me really quickly, the school year's about to begin, I'm going to say it's unconstitutional, but it only applies to the districts that are represented in this lawsuit. So the families that sued, whatever districts their kids go to, those districts are not allowed to put the 10 Commandments posters up. As for the rest of you, you will have to wait for my decision, which will come soon. So that's where we're at in Arkansas, where all the districts involved in the lawsuits can't put them up, but we're still waiting on a final decision. In Texas, they passed a similar law. They got sued over it. A district court judge said the exact same thing. He said, if you're one of the families that sued over this and your kids go to those districts, fine, those districts do not put up the 10 Commandments, but my final decision will come soon. Now, here's where this gets interesting. All 3 of those states I just mentioned, Louisiana, Arkansas, Texas, they all fall under the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. And like I said, Louisiana's case, it was appealed to the Fifth Circuit, and a panel of judges, 3-judge panel, said, no, it's still unconstitutional. So what happened this week that is disturbing? Well, what happened this week is what I'm about to show you right here, which is that the full, like, Louisiana's governor and his attorney general, they said, we heard what you said, Fifth Circuit judges, but now we want to ask the entire Fifth Circuit, are you sure your colleagues did the right thing here? Maybe all of you on the Fifth Circuit would like to take another crack at this before we ask the Supreme Court to weigh in. And this week, right over here, here's what all of the judges it's a 1-page ruling right here. Here's what they said. A member of the court, having requested a poll on the petition for rehearing en banc, meaning all of them should hear it, a majority of the judges in regular active service and not disqualified, having voted in favor. And I know that's a lot of legalese, but what it says is we took a poll amongst ourselves and a majority of us would like to rehear this case. And that's troubling because, again, the Fifth Circuit is conservative in general. And so what have they said? It is ordered that we will rehear this case with oral argument on some date in the future. We'll figure that out later. And the other thing is the decision that 3-judge panel made on June 20th, 2025 is vacated. Yikes. So what does that actually mean in practice? What that means is the appellate court's decision that said what the district court judge said, we affirm it, that's off the books now. It's as if that never happened. That also means for now that the district court judge's ruling is still in effect. And that judge's ruling said very clearly, no one in Louisiana gets to put up 10 Commandments posters in public schools. So that's part one. In fact, if you remember from what that judge said, back when that judge issued the ruling, he actually said there were a bunch of reasons you cannot put the 10 Commandments posters up in public schools, not just because it's promoting religion, though that is one of the concerns, but the Christian right, the Republicans, they were arguing, well, of course you could put the 10 Commandments up. It's not religion, it's tradition. It's what we used to do back in the day before we allowed other religions to come into this country. And what the federal judge said is that there is no tradition of that. That's not what they did a couple of 100 years ago. There's no evidence that putting up the 10 Commandments was ever part of tradition. The judge also said this is very much preaching religion to a captive audience of children. You're putting up the 10 Commandments because you want to shove your religion in kids' faces. I know that's what you're doing. He said you can't do that. And very clearly, the way the law was written in Louisiana, they said you have to put up the 10 Commandments, but you could put up other displays of other legal documents in our history, but those are optional. You don't have to put those up. And so the judge is like, well, if you make the religious thing mandatory, but the other thing's optional, it seems like you're promoting religion as well, right? So that's why the judge said it was illegal. That's why the appellate court back a few months ago said, yeah, that judge's decision seems pretty good to us. But now the entire Fifth Circuit is going to hear this case. And what do we do with that information? What do we make of that? The Freedom from Religion Foundation is one of the groups that filed this lawsuit in the first place. And when they wrote about it, and when they said, oh, the entire Fifth Circuit has agreed to reconsider a prior ruling, they didn't say this is good or bad. The only thing they really said is down here. The panel's unanimous ruling last June was well-reasoned and correctly followed binding Supreme Court precedent. We believe there is no reason to revisit it. Which, yeah, it was a solid argument from the district court. The appellate court said what he said. What is there to go over at this point? What is it that the Fifth Circuit wants to do? Nevertheless, FFRF says, we look forward to presenting our client's case to the entire Court of Appeals, and we remain confident that the constitutional values and principles at the heart of the First Amendment, which guarantee religious freedom for all students and families, will prevail in the end. And then, as if they're writing a note to those Fifth Circuit judges, they say, we emphasize that the district court's preliminary injunction order in this case, where the court found that this law is facially unconstitutional, is not disturbed by the Fifth Circuit's decision to rehear the appeal, which is their way of saying, even if the Fifth Circuit vacated the appeals court decision, it doesn't mean Louisiana schools should go putting up 10 Commandments posters everywhere. Just a reminder, in case any school's getting some dumb ideas right now, don't do it. So here's why I don't know what to make of this. Why would you want to overturn your colleague's decision? Because it's a random assortment of 3 judges that hears any of these cases. Why would you want to overturn that? Why would you want to vacate that ruling and say, let's all take a crack at this, unless you thought there was a chance that when the entire Fifth Circuit heard it, maybe they will suddenly decide the 10 Commandments is legal to put up in public schools and courtrooms and things like that. Now, one of the things the lawyers said is right now, about 50, 60 years ago, there was a Supreme Court case that tried to get 10 commandments outside of a courtroom. And the Supreme Court at the time said, you can't just put a 10 commandments monument outside a courthouse. That's not okay. And they said that was illegal. And the lawyers for the church state separation side said that ruling is still in effect. And what they're doing in Louisiana is basically saying, put up the 10 commandments in public schools. It's not a different situation. Just because we're talking about a poster instead of a monument, it doesn't change what the Supreme Court said decades and decades ago. And so what I'm worried about is that they're going to try, this entire Fifth Circuit may try to overturn that precedent, or they're going to say it was wrongfully argued, or that maybe Louisiana's law is somehow different, so that precedent doesn't apply. And this is where we're going to see trouble, because at the end of the day, if they say the 10 Commandments posters are legal in public schools, you're going to see a rush of red states all rushing to pass their own laws to put the 10 Commandments up everywhere. And the only way to undo that then is to go to the very conservative Supreme Court and make an argument to them that this is not tradition. You can't do this. And of course, the Supreme Court's going to do whatever the conservatives on that court want to do. So this is a very scary situation right now. Because up until this point, every judge looking at these cases has said, of course it's illegal to put the 10 Commandments up. Who's saying no? Well, now we have the entire Fifth Circuit saying, we'd like to maybe say no. And that's troubling. So I don't know what to make of that. I haven't heard anything that suggests this is going to end well, despite the well wishes of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. But also, I feel like the conservative Christians and the Republicans who pushed the entire Fifth Circuit to rehear this case, I feel like they're celebrating right now, because this is exactly what they hoped for. They haven't gotten their wish yet, but this is what needed to happen so that they can get their wish to shove religion, Christianity specifically, in everyone's faces. So, scary situation. It's going to take several months before anything happens here, but this is not good news right now. And I don't know yet what they're going to try to do with this. I don't know why they want to rehear this case. There was nothing wrong with the decisions to begin with. So I will leave it at that, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention because it's going to be news several months from now, and I don't know how it'll go yet. What questions do we have here? With all the problems in our country right now, the 10 Commandments should be the least of our worries. The sad thing is, with all the problems in our country right now, Republicans genuinely believe, at least a bunch of them, genuinely believe putting the 10 Commandments up on school walls would fix like 98% of all the problems. Because, of course, they don't think anything their party is doing is part of the problem. Ugh. They just want to force another case of this nonsense up to SCOTUS in the hopes they will get a ruling in their favor. They won't. They won't what? They won't get a ruling in their favor? I don't know. I am not as optimistic as you are. I mean, in order to get the ruling they want, though, whether it comes from the Supreme Court or this entire Fifth Circuit, they would have to ignore decades and decades of precedent that say you can't shove Christianity in everyone's faces. The government cannot do that. How much legal precedent would they have to ignore in order to say, yeah, we found a reason you're allowed to do it? Well, then you're ignoring facts and history because they didn't do this hundreds of years ago. We are a diverse country now that is absolutely shoving religion in people's faces. Just name the first 4 commandments. You can't do it without invoking religious bullshit. So I don't know what to make of that then. All of a sudden, they see an inkling of hope to push their views on everyone. Yeah, and the wrong people are getting hope right now. Like the people trying to shove religion in public schools, I don't want to see them getting hope. They were shot down repeatedly by judges, as they should have been, and there's no reason to undo any of that. Is there anything that stops the SCOTUS from ignoring anything? At this point, no, there isn't. I get depressed every time I see legal scholars or columnists writing about Sonia Sotomayor's Amazing Descent or Ketanji Brown Jackson's latest Descent. It's like, I mean, I love their writing. I appreciate that they're fighting the good fight. But at some point, if all they ever get to write is dissents, what that means is their decisions don't really have an effect. Not anytime soon. They don't have any power on the court right now. Interesting Times became a YouTube member. Thank you so much for doing that. I appreciate it. All right, I'm going to jump to another story. Give me a moment to pull some stuff up here. I have a guess. That is my guess. Hey, I got one right. Props go to my podcast co-host who would have told me that one anyway. All right. This is a bizarre story that started making the rounds this week because there was a big article about it in The Guardian. And the entire thing, if you don't know the backstory here, is hilarious. Okay, let's talk about Christian culture for a second. Because the ongoing joke with Christian culture is that it's always a sad attempt to replicate whatever's popular in the country. So, like, why do you have Christian movies like God's Not Dead? Because, you know, regular movies are doing great. So they figure, let's make a Christian version of a popular movie, and then everyone will love it. And God's Not Dead actually did very well. But every time you see a Christian movie, they're either low budget, badly acted, or in the case of God's Not Dead, you hire people like Kevin Sorbo because you can't find real actors to do the job. But, and also, why are the movies bad? Even if God's Not Dead made a lot of money in the theaters, it's not a good movie because it is so set on hammering you over the head with a message that you got to find Jesus that they just skip over any nuance, any discussion. Like there's nothing to talk about after those movies because the moral message has always been clear from the beginning. And it doesn't matter, like every character is a caricature, right? Like the atheist is never nuanced. It's always, this is a kid who's thinking some very bad things. He's going to do something horrible. He's depressed and sad. Every Christian movie is like that, right? What about Christian music? If you've ever listened to like contemporary Christian music, the kind they play at the cool mega churches, like maybe it's catchy. There is a whole like genre and subculture for Christian music. But again, the lyrics are really bad. Not that lyrics to all pop songs are like super interesting, but like when you shove Jesus into every sentence, it gets old after a while. It's why South Park can make fun of it very easily. Even attempts to make right-wing sitcoms are really embarrassing because it's very clear that acting and writing are low priorities, and the only priority is getting across a religious message. So that's the problem with Christian culture. So the bottom line is Christians love to create cheap imitations of everything that's popular, but it's never as good as the real thing. And I feel like everyone who watches this sort of live stream, you all know that because you've witnessed it. Maybe you grew up in it. And apparently, and this is the story I want to talk about, the same thing goes for talk shows. Just to give you a little background on myself, I do a lot of news reading and commentary. And when I'm working in the morning, usually what's playing in the background while I'm sifting through information are the monologues from the night before, which is all to say, I am pretty much the biggest connoisseur I know of late night comedy shows. I watch pretty much all of them. I don't watch the entire thing, but like Colbert's monologue, A Closer Look, Jimmy Kimmel's monologue, whatever John Oliver did. Those things are, I've been watching them for years. I'm very attuned to what happens in late night comedy. I care about it. According to The Guardian, though, there was a recent attempt to make a Christian late night talk show, which sounds funny to think about because, like, if you're looking for a not liberal late night talk show, you have Jimmy Fallon, who's pretty much famously apolitical and doesn't pay attention to politics. He'll make jokes, but like They're not biting satire, right? So this was the headline that The Guardian had that was really funny. A right-wing late-night show may have bombed, but the funding behind it is no laughing matter. And by the way, yes, I will play a clip for you of this in just a second. So here's what the article basically said. There is a wealthy group of conservatives, a wealthy group, that spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to develop this late night comedy show hosted by Eric Metaxas. And if that name is not familiar to you, what you need to know about Metaxas is many years ago, he wrote a book about a guy who fought the Nazis. And as far as I can tell, I never read the book, but I don't think it was a bad book. It went over well, it got decent reviews. And for a while, Eric Metaxas was like the evangelical academic. He was the smart, he was the intellectual evangelical. And then in the past, like 10 years, he's become primarily known as a right-wing MAGA conspiracy theorist. And he has a podcast, and all he does is spew conspiracy theories left and right. But they tapped Metaxas to be the host of this late-night talk show. And the Guardian article said 4 episodes of this show were filmed, at least 4, and they saw all of them. And they were so bad that the show didn't go anywhere because nobody was interested in paying to make more episodes of this thing. So let me show you some clips from this show, because guess what? All 4 episodes are on YouTube. I'll just play you I think this is episode 1 of the ones that were taped. And this is the first joke Metaxas tells. I won't tell you anything more. This was, by the way, I will tell you, this was filmed maybe in late 2022, just to give you a sense of the timing here. But maybe that doesn't matter because it's not like these are that political or topical. Here's clip 1.
Big news in the world of show business. Harrison Ford will be returning for a 5th Indiana Jones movie. Yeah, in this one, Harrison will find an ancient artifact by looking in the mirror. Oh, did you see that coming? Did you see? Okay. Yeah, I wanted to start on an insulting note. Was that okay? I hope that was okay. Okay.
Oh my God. It's not just that the opening joke is just a Harrison Ford is old joke. It's that he then spends another like 13 seconds trying to riff on a joke that wasn't funny in the first place. It's just sad. It's just that bad. Let me give you one more here. This is I think from a different episode. Oh no, I'm going to hold that clip. I'll get to that one in a second. Let me show you what The Guardian said though about all of this. Here we go. The Guardian sat through nearly 4 hours of The Talk Show. Yeah, by the way, it was literally called The Talk Show. Very catchy. And found it to be an almost exact copy of existing late night shows, just worse. With hack jokes about tired issues and has-been conservative guests. The show was never picked up, presumably to the chagrin of Ziklag, more on them later, and its investors who had lofty expectations. Wait, it gets worse. Unfortunately, across the 4 pilots, Metaxas's comedic bent was noticeable only by its absence. Oh my God. If you fashion yourself as a comedian and anyone ever says that about you, retire. It's over. What else did they say about this? The common theme among the guests was that they had been naturally phased out of existing talk shows due to their irrelevance. Ouch. And there's one more thing to show you here. This right here. In its email, and this is an email the group Ziklag sent to prospective donors. In its email, Ziklag said it was offering the opportunity to invest as part of the Media Mountain, a reference to the 7 Mountain Mandate, a theology popular among the Christian right. The theology proposes that Christians should seek to take over 7 spheres of influence in public life: religion, the government, the media, education, culture, entertainment, and business. So this was part of a strategy which has been ongoing for some time to basically take over every realm of influence in the country. And one thing Christians have failed to take over is pop culture, entertainment. So this was an attempt to shove their way into pop culture so people would think Christianity is cool. So the news here is not actually that Metaxas filmed 4-hour-long episodes of this awful talk show, because all 4 of those episodes have been on Metaxas's YouTube channel for about 2.5 years now. They've been up. Very few people have watched them, but he did upload them to his channel years ago. What's news here is how much money they tried to pour into this awful, awful project, and who funded it, and just how badly it failed. So we asked about Ziklag. I mentioned Ziklag. What is Ziklag? In the Bible, the town of Ziklag is where the character of David lives for a little while when he's being persecuted. It's like his safe space. It's a place from where he can plan out his counterattacks. So there is a wealthy group of Christians that formed a group called Ziklag, and the reference is Christians need a safe space because they're being persecuted by everybody, which is an amazing thing to hear from the kind of people who have so much money and power in the United States. It makes no sense. There was reporting in ProPublica at the time, and I think I made a video about this last year, but ProPublica and a website called Documented, they reported in 2024 that the Christians behind Ziklag have assets of over $12 million, or at least close to $12 million. And the reason they needed all that money, again, 2024, is because they wanted to make sure Republicans were mobilizing their voter base while also trying to purge Democrats from the roles of swing states. So they were very much trying to influence the elections last year. The elections are over. Conservatives won. And now they're moving on to how else can we influence the world, since politics has gone over great for everybody. So what The Guardian did is they got a hold of some of the emails Ziklag sent to all these rich Christians, and they're like, we need your money because we have an idea. We want to make a talk show. And this is what they said in the emails here. Let me see right here. Yeah, back to this Guardian article. This is what the email said. Spoiler alert, the secular elites who currently reign over late night TV are about to find out the joke's on them. Ziklag's pitch email read. It lauded Metaxas, a conservative radio host and author who was an eager proponent of the false claim that the 2020 election was stolen, claiming his comedic bent has gone largely unnoticed. Until now, that is. You know why his comedic bent has gone unnoticed? It's because he's not funny. Do you all remember when Rush Limbaugh died? I was surprised that many conservatives, when they were trying to eulogize the guy, they were like, you know what I'm going to miss about Rush Limbaugh? It's that he was so funny. And it's like, what? Really? You thought he was a comedian? Like, what's an example of a joke he told? And any example they ever say about that is always him punching down. He's making fun of some minority group. He's making fun of black women or lesbians or trans people or something like that. This, by the way, is how all conservative comedians operate. They're not thoughtfully funny. They're just like, you know who I can pick on? This marginalized group. And they think it's funny. That's like how the whole Joe Rogan Marvel Cinematic Universe operates. It's just a big game of punching down. Like, that's what conservative comedy is. So I don't know why these people thought, you know who would get across to all of America, including the heartland? It's this guy who makes jokes like that. I cannot believe people with millions of dollars at their disposal cannot see that Metaxas is a talentless hack. I mean, at the very least, he's not a comedian. They have $12 million. They cannot buy a clue. And they thought this humorless show would be an alternative for people who think Jimmy Fallon is too liberal. Now, to their credit, The Guardian got in touch with the producer of this show. The guy who made this a couple of years ago, his name is Chris Himes, and this is what he said. Chris Himes, who produced the talk show, said the show was not intended to be a right-wing late-night show. The aim, Himes said, was to create a broad throwback late-night program for the entire country, not just one side. These are not partisan or right-wing shows. Think Letterman or Dick Cavett in tone. Humor first, with no space for snark or clapter, he said in an email. These people think David Letterman was not partisan. I mean, he made a lot of jokes, a lot of which were disliked by the right. But in general, especially toward the latter part of his career, David Letterman very much shared his political views on a lot of things, especially when he had health scares and things like that. Who thinks David Letterman is apolitical? Have you listened to him at all? But also, if you want to create a broad throwback late night program for the entire country, what does that exactly mean? Because why do you think Colbert's not doing that or Jimmy Kimmel's not doing that? What this guy is trying to say is it's unfair because those comedians tend to pick on Republicans, which they do it for a couple reasons. One, Republicans are in power. Whoever's in power is going to get made fun of. That's how the game works. But also, if one side does comically or cruel, dumb things, and Republicans do that all the time, and you elect really ignorant extremists, and Republicans do that all the time, what do you think they're going to talk about? They don't make fun necessarily of like Kamala Harris or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez because they just don't give them much to make fun of. Kamala Harris did, and they did make fun of her for a lot of things. But in general, what are you mad about? Oh, they want healthcare for everybody. What's the joke there? I don't know. But Marjorie Taylor Greene talking about Jewish space lasers, or Lauren Boebert doing whatever it is she does to her date in a movie theater. Yeah, when those stories pop up all the time, yeah, you're going to make fun of it. So this idea that Eric Metaxas was creating this late night throwback talk show for the whole country, as if the current late night comedians aren't already doing that. What you're saying is you don't like it when they make fun of your people, even though your people are like comically ignorant, if not cruel. Like, maybe stop giving them so much fodder and they wouldn't make fun of you. But it's not like coastal jokes just because they mock Republicans. Maybe Republicans deserve to be condemned and criticized and mocked. I don't get why you have to avoid politics to make a show for the whole country. Because if the news channels are not telling you outright that Republicans are the problem here, thank goodness there are some late night comedians who are like, well, we don't have to pretend both sides are equal. We can just go after the one that's causing all the problems, as you should. That's, in another era, that would be called journalism, but there you go. What else did Himes say here that I thought was funny? Himes added, to be clear, a right-wing late night show would be a terrible idea. What we're building is something more essential, a genuinely funny, unifying alternative. And again, that is the whole both sides are bad, so either we make fun of everybody or we make fun of nobody in politics, which is the dumbest possible way to host any kind of show, because you're basically saying, I never have thoughts about anything that's happening, so let me make jokes about old people being old. You can watch, The Guardian has like a 90-second highlight reel of Eric Metaxas doing jokes from his monologue, and they're just sad. They're not even bad jokes. They're just like, really? This is the thing you thought everyone would want to hear you joke about? It's weird. He's making fun of Ken, like the doll Ken getting a prostate because he's old. They love old people jokes. I don't know. Bad drivers, I think, was the subject of one joke. The Kardashians not having substance was a joke. But again, they were very much like set up, punchline. They never throw you off track. They never misdirect. They're just not well written. You know what I mean? So the shows they made, the 4 episodes Eric Metaxas made, they were just not funny. And like I said, avoiding politics, I don't know why that's good for the whole country, but if you're avoiding what's happening in the news, if the whole pitch of this show is we're going to make a show that's good for everybody, and we're not going to be a right-wing show or a left-wing show, what they're saying is, you know, the stuff everybody's talking about because it affects us on a day-to-day basis, we're going to ignore all that, and we're just going to tell dumb jokes. That's not even why people watch late night talk shows then. Do you know why people watch late night talk shows if they watch them late at night? It's because you just got home from work, you haven't had time maybe to watch the news, and maybe you trust the voices on late night TV and you're like, you know what? They're going to give me the news and hopefully it'll be funny and entertaining because maybe you don't like watching the boring news. Maybe that's just too dry for you. I think that's why a lot of people watch this stuff. Or you think it's actually funny, and I happen to think some of it's actually funny. But for what it's worth, this idea that a right-wing late night show would be a terrible idea, I'll be honest with you, I don't think it would be. Not because I think they would be funny. I don't really know how that would actually work because I don't think conservatives are funny. But the idea for a talk show where you interview people and you brought on some conservatives, not just to do a little verbal debate on CNN, but to open up about themselves, maybe humanize themselves. Honestly, I think there would be some value to that. And they didn't focus on that at all here, but to bring guests on and then ignore politics, that feels like a waste of everybody's time. Like, what is the point of watching any late night show if they're not tackling current events or they're not asking pointed questions that revolve around the guest's relevance? I mean, this week, Taylor Swift was on a couple late night talk shows. Why? Because she has her new album out. And guess what they asked her about? They asked her about the album. They asked her about her engagement, because of course you do, because that's why she's in the news. And if they have a senator on, you're going to ask them about the current government shutdown. And you're going to ask them about the future of the Democratic Party, if that's who you're bringing on. Why would you avoid that stuff? Why would anyone want to watch? You know who Eric Metaxas did have as a guest? Danny Bonaducci from the Partridge Family. Why? No reason. And again, this is the problem. It's not that Danny Bonaducci necessarily is like a bad guest. It's, well, why are we talking to him now? Is there a point to it? I'm not sure. They also had Carrot Top, who's just doing his comedy show in Vegas, but isn't relevant. He's doing his thing, fine. But like, why do we need to hear from him? I don't know. The one interesting guest they had on the Metaxas show is the director, Ron Howard. But the funny thing about that is they hyped this up. Like, we're going to talk to director Ron Howard. We got one of the biggest directors in Hollywood. We're going to interview him. Except what the Guardian points out is that Ron Howard clearly was doing a press junket, meaning he goes to like a hotel and sits in a chair like this for 8 hours in a day. And basically every media outlet that gets a press pass gets to have like 10 minutes with the guy. And so when you're watching Entertainment Tonight or E! News or whatever, usually you're seeing hosts on press junkets. They get their 10 minutes, everyone acts like they're super excited, and then the stars of the new movie do the same interview like 100 times. And Eric Metaxas was doing that interview from the comfort of his own home. He wasn't even in the room. So I don't know. I don't get why they thought this show would be a good idea. This is really just me riffing on late night TV at this point. But there was one other thing I wanted to point out, which is you just saw that producer mention this is not a right-wing show or a left-wing show. We're an apolitical show. But it's not apolitical. And let me show you one more short clip. And this is a clip in which Eric Metaxas was making a joke about Joe Biden. And by the way, that's fine. It was filmed in like 2022. You can make fun of Biden. The question is it a good joke? And I'm not even showing you the joke. It's irrelevant. I'm showing you the setup to the joke. See if you could tell why I don't think the show is apolitical.
This is some huge news. I have to begin here. This is big, okay? Yesterday, President Biden shocked the nation.
Did you see what he did there? President Biden. Because Eric Metaxas is an election denier. He is a conspiracy theorist who thinks Joe Biden did not legitimately win the 2020 election, which he did. So right there, that's your show for the entire country. This is your apolitical show. BS. All of that's ridiculous. This idea, Himes also said there's no alternative to the liberal late night host. But honestly, there are. Bill Maher is not really a liberal ally at this point. He's very much if you want to make fun of transgender people, if you want to attack wokeness, he's more than happy to do it for you. So I don't know. I know he's not conservative, but he's not really liberal. And also, you know what the most popular late night show is these days? It's Gutfeld on Fox News. I don't consider that a comedy show because I don't think Gutfeld's a comedian. But that show is popular because it's on Fox and it's on late at night. So it technically counts, I guess, as a late night talk show, and they have guests and stuff. But those shows regularly punch down by attacking the marginalized. And that's what right-wing humor is like. Anyway, no one needed this show. Even if there was room for another late night host on TV, they picked the wrong guy to helm this particular ship because Metaxas is so unlikable. By the way, let me show you this. If you're not familiar with Metaxas, there was a time when Joe Biden was doing a debate. I think it may have been in the lead-in to the 2020 elections, but I don't remember if it was the primary or the general election. But Joe Biden was in a debate, and he said something really dumb. He basically said, and I'm paraphrasing here, he said black people typically vote for Democrats, right? But he said, if you're not voting for Democrats, you're not really black. And that was a dumb thing for Joe Biden to say. That's not even true. But this is how Eric Metaxas responded to that at the time. Because again, he thinks he's hilarious. I'm not going to read this for you, but I will just let it sit here so you can read it for yourself. I will give you a second to just look at that one. Yikes. Oh my God. He thought that was a good idea. Yikes. Eric Metaxas has also sucker punched a guy on a bike, and it was caught on video. He's literally the poster boy for how evangelicals have lost their damn minds. Look at this article from Religion News Service. Headline, Eric Metaxas and the losing of the evangelical mind. This is from 2020, but look at this. Eric Metaxas, the author of biographies of William Wilberforce and Dietrich Bonhoeffer, has proclaimed that Donald Trump won the 2020 election in a landslide. As a result, Metaxas forecasts, many will be imprisoned for attempting to steal the election, an attempt that he calls the most horrible thing that ever happened in the history of our nation. Thankfully, Jesus is with us in this fight. When a reputed, I don't know, that's a word. When an evangelical public intellectual exhibits this behavior, it is worth asking about the state of the evangelical mind. This author is literally saying, have evangelicals lost their damn minds because this is one of the smart ones and he's turned crazy. That's who Eric Metaxas is. That's the guy who they thought would be what all of America wants to see. Which is a long way of saying Ziklag is funded by very dumb people. They have millions of dollars and they're doing this stuff. Who thinks the problem with late night TV is not enough Eric Metaxas and not enough jokes that appeal to nobody? I could have told him that and I only would have charged him $100,000. But this is white evangelical culture for you. They're never satisfied with things that are popular. They got to make their own crappy versions of it. And this is the best they can do. It is so weird. I don't know if it's bad or I don't know if it's just bad or more weird. I'm not sure which of those it is. But this project didn't fail because Metaxas did not know what he was doing. It failed because there's no heart, there's no passion, there are no writers, apparently. And if you don't have that, if there's no voice from the host, why would anyone waste their time watching this stuff? I have no idea. Okay, I'll stop there. What questions do you have? Oh, thanks for becoming a YouTube member. I appreciate that. Thanks for that donation, Olivia. There's a few good Christian movies like Ben-Hur, but those are generally older epics, not the slops they are doing today. You could even argue the Charlton Heston 10 Commandments was a good movie, but there is a difference between telling a story with biblical characters and like trying to hammer home a Christian message first and foremost at the expense of telling an actually captivating story, which is what a lot of Christian movies are very bad at. Thanks for that donation. When I got after my boss for making a crappy R-word joke as punching down, he legit had no idea what I meant by that. The right has no empathy. And there have been books that have come out literally saying, you know what we need less of? Empathy. That's an actual right-wing talking point, as if they had a ton to begin with. But yeah, that's their idea of humor. Not conservative Christians, but like conservatives in general. Their idea of a joke is, I'll tell you what my pronouns are, blank and blank. Or, hey, let's just make fun of all women or all Muslims or whatever, like generalizing, stereotyping. It's very hacky. It's very easy to parody because there's no thought put into it. I don't get it. An apolitical late night talk show that doesn't cover current events is another attempt to keep the public uneducated. Yeah, and what are you talking about? I mean, if you listen to any podcasts, any of them, whatever it is you listen to, if they have guests, usually you're talking to a guest because they have something you think your audience ought to hear. Maybe they wrote a book. Maybe they're coming out with a project. Maybe they have expertise in something that you would like to know more about, you think your audience wants to know more about. The thing about this show is they were just bringing on guests for the purpose of filling seats and filling up time. It's not because their guests had anything everyone needed to hear. It makes no sense to me. I don't understand why they didn't just hire decent people to run the show. Churches make Christian movies to create a closed ecosystem. There's no way to escape for the children raised in the faith. I mean, yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. You create Christian movies so that Christians feel like they're part of the culture. Like you get to go have movie night. You can hang out with your friends and watch a movie. Okay, but I'm not talking about those Christian movies. I'm talking about the ones they try to make like a whole thing. Like they think the whole country needs to watch this movie. I mean, Pure Flix, their entire mission is coming out with movies that break out of the Christian bubble. They're not good at it, with the exception of the original God's Not Dead, but that is what their whole thing has been. Like, we don't want to make movies that only Christians watch. We want to bring Christianity to the masses. And then they all fail for the same reasons, and no one seems to have figured out how to fix that problem. You think with all that money the Christian church has, you would think it'll be a bigger music and movie budget. Seriously. And do you remember, I know I made a video about this, the whole campaign for He Gets Us? You may have seen these ads on TV. They spent $100 million to put those ads everywhere. They bought ads to air during the Super Bowl. And what was it? It was basically a series of ads saying, I'm paraphrasing, like, Jesus gets you if you're poor, because he was poor. If you're depressed, yes, Jesus gets you too. That was the idea of the ad. But the problem with that, as I've said before, is who cares? Like, the people funding that very much think Jesus shares their bigotries. Like, the people funding this are the same people who want to take away civil rights from various groups of people. So don't tell me Jesus is like all of us when the people funding it have an agenda. You can't pretend Jesus is apolitical when the people pushing him onto your screens are very political. So it's just a a thoughtless campaign to begin with. But they have so much money, and none of them have any clue. The people behind it don't seem to have the slightest idea how to break through outside their bubble, because the fact is, the message that the most famous public Christians get out is almost always a message of hate and bigotry, at least in the United States, at least when it comes to, politically powerful Christians. I would love to see a Hemet special of watching and reacting to God's Not Dead. You know what? There is a fantastic podcast, God Awful Movies, where they pretty much do exactly what you're suggesting, where they watch Christian movies and do a whole Mystery Science Theater 3000 thing to it all. It's very good. I highly recommend it. I've been on the show a couple of times. I was not on their God's Not Dead episode, but I have done a couple other things with them. All right, I'm jumping to another story. Give me a second here. All right. Oh my God, yeah. If you haven't seen God Awful Movies, go download God Awful Movies. Okay. I have an update for you from last week. I talked about Ryan Walters, the superintendent of public instruction in Oklahoma. Last time I talked to you, he was resigning. Maybe I talked about it 2 weeks ago. I don't remember. But he resigned. He is no longer in charge of public education in Oklahoma. Hallelujah. That is fantastic. He's decided to quit that elected position in order to become the CEO of a group whose whole thing is let's destroy teachers' unions, because the one thing Ryan Walters loves to do is damage public education. So he's often doing it somewhere else. And we don't quite know the real reason he's doing that. We just have speculation, but whatever, he's gone now. And this is what I want to update you on, because since he left at the end of September, I think October 1st is the first day they were rid of him, there have been a few changes in Oklahoma really worth paying attention to, because it seems that Oklahoma's first order of business post Ryan Walters is undoing everything he did as much as possible. And this is seriously amazing. And again, if you're new to any of this, this is Ryan Walters. His whole thing is, let me get the Bible. That's the Trump Bible. Let me get the Bible in public schools. Let me get the 10 Commandments in public schools. Let me have taxpayers fund a Catholic charter school. That's a thing he wanted to do. Let's rewrite the history curriculum so that we're making sure kids learn how awesome Jesus was. That's a thing he did. So he was bad for kids. He's one of the many reasons Oklahoma is currently ranked like 48th through 50th in the nation in education, depending on which metric you are looking at. Okay, but since he left, let's talk about a couple changes. The first big change: who has taken his place? That's important, right? Because there was a worry that Governor Kevin Stitt, who is a Republican and super conservative, he gets to appoint Ryan Walters' replacement. And I was worried, is he just going to pick some other super conservative person who hates public education? And even if it's not Ryan Walters, who Stitt did not like, maybe it's someone similar to Ryan Walters. Like, is it Trumpism without Trump? You know what I mean? That's what I was worried about. I read an article a couple of weeks ago after Ryan Walters announced that he was going to retire. It was from a legit Oklahoma media outlet, and they said, here's our guesses as to who might replace Walters. And on their list, they named a bunch of retired Republican lawmakers who may have served on education committees. Maybe they had a background in education. And it's like, well, they're not doing anything. Maybe Stitt's going to tap one of them to do it. And I don't know that any of them would have been great choices. Well, guess what? Kevin Stitt ended up picking someone totally different. The person he picked wasn't even mentioned in that article from a legit media outlet. He picked a guy named Lyndall Fields, Lindel, Lyndon Fields. And it's weird in the sense that Lindell, I don't want to get him confused with the pillow dude. He's not overtly political. Like, if you look at his campaign donations, he's given more money to Republicans, yes. But when I say more money, I mean like hundreds of dollars, maybe 1,000. But here's the thing. He's also given some money to Democrats. Not like 20 years ago. I mean like recently. So that's unusual. The other weird thing about Fields is that he seems to have credentials. Look at this. Fields, 54, spent nearly 12 years as the superintendent of Tri-County Technology Center in Bartlesville, after previously serving more than 9 years as an assistant or deputy superintendent at the center. So this guy spent 2 decades helping run a technology center. That's not nothing. After retiring from a company called Career Tech in 2021, he founded Your Culture Coach, a leadership consulting firm. I mean, whatever. That sounds fine. At least I don't know any red flags in that paragraph. This is a guy who worked like regular jobs for the sort of person who's like, I can train you to be good in your career, to be a better coach, whatever it is. Seems fine, right? Like nothing there scares me. But not only that, when they interviewed this guy, look at what he said to the Oklahoma Voice, or at least they quoted him. Fields said he isn't even interested in running in 2026. So this guy only has, he's replacing Ryan Walters. Ryan Walters was up for re-election next November. This guy says, I'm not even running for this seat when it's up for grabs. My job is to be a caretaker until the next person takes the spot. So Fields said he isn't interested in running in 2026 to keep the office for another 4 years. He said he is laser focused on what needs to be done at the state agency, listing student reading proficiency, great, teacher recruitment and retention, great, and expanding students' future career options as his priorities. Wonderful. Stitt said that's exactly the response he hoped for. That was a question I asked in the interview process because I wanted somebody not focused on the next election. Let's focus on the kids. And the implication there is Ryan Walters very much did not care about the kids. So again, and by the way, other articles also said Fields is replacing some of the top staffers at the Department of Education in the state with like qualified personnel. These are people with histories serving as superintendents, leading large school districts in the state. He's grabbing like people from the Tulsa public schools to help run the state's department. It seems fine and normal. Now, we'll see what happens when we get to policy issues down the line. But right now, he just seems credible, which is a weird thing to say. I don't feel like they're going to be embarrassed by this guy. And maybe I'll eat my words a year from now, but like, I don't know. But that's good news number one. Here's the second big change that is happening since Ryan Walters left the department, and it involves the Department of Education's website. And here's the thing. We can see what the website looked like 2 weeks ago, thanks to the Internet Archive. This is what the State Department of Education's website looked like under Ryan Walters the last week he was in office. And check this out. Welcome to the State Department of Education. What does it say here? The current state superintendent of public instruction is Ryan Walters. He is passionate about who cares. And then if you want to read more about him, just click this box. It's very much the first thing you see when you go onto the website is Ryan Walters bragging about himself. Keep that in the back of your head. What else is on this? The story of America. And if you click on that link, I won't do it right now because I think it'll ruin what I have here. But if you click on that link, the story of America links to Ryan Walters' Jesus-heavy social studies standards, which included election misinformation. It included the Christian nationalist version of American history. That link up there also has links to the right-wing PragerU, which is a right-wing propaganda group. What else do we have on this page? You have press releases. Here's the latest press release at the time of this screenshot. Superintendent Walters, Every high school will have a Turning Point USA Club America chapter. Because after Charlie Kirk was murdered, he said, you know what every school in Oklahoma needs? One of those conservative clubs where I guess you could sit around and stare at each other and tell your friend why they don't deserve civil rights. But this is what he was focused on. And what else do we have? Oh, hey, teacher removal and districts under investigation regarding Charlie Kirk. Because if you dare criticize Ryan Walters' Lord and Savior, he's going to make sure you're fired. That's what this guy was focused on when he was in office. What else do we have here? Oh, look, Office of Religious Liberty and Patriotism. Why? Why do we even have that? That's not a thing anybody needs. On that page, you learn about why the 10 Commandments ought to be posted in classrooms, which no, it shouldn't. And Ryan Walters insists that they should be posted. That's not true. They cannot be. He also falsely claims that public schools have gone too far when defending church-state separation, and he blames that on litigation-fearful board attorneys and outside anti-religious groups, which is weird for him to say, because very recently a federal judge, I made a video about this, you may recall, the Freedom from Religion Foundation had sent letters to two Oklahoma school districts over the course of 6 years where they said, hey, we heard a coach at your school's doing this and it's illegal. And so we're letting you know that. And can you take care of this? And the schools responded by saying, oh, we looked into it. And yes, you are right. That was going on. But don't worry, we have put a stop to it. And then the Freedom from Religion Foundation said, cool, thank you. And that was the end of it. And Ryan Walters sued Freedom from Religion Foundation for warning those districts that they were doing something illegal. And then very recently, a judge tossed out that lawsuit and told Ryan Walters, what are you mad about? They didn't do anything wrong. And yet Ryan Walters is like, outside anti-religion groups are the reason your school can't have nice things. So this is the website that Ryan Walters had. Let me show you the Department of Education's website now. Look at this. Do you see anything there about Lyndall Fields, the new guy who took the place? No, because it's not about him. What do you see when you go to this website right now? oklahoma.gov/education.html. Hey, welcome to the State Department of Education. If you're an educator, an administrator, a family member, a community member, here's the stuff you probably want to know. Look at this. Do you want to apply to be Oklahoma Teacher of the Year? You can apply right there. Ryan Walters didn't even have that up. There's school choice stuff in Oklahoma, but basically, it just looks like a pretty professional website. That's exactly what you would want to see if you had any reason to go to the State Department of Education's website. It's like a normal place, which is great. That sounds good. Not every vestige of Walters is off that site, by the way, and I don't think it should be. They should have it saved for archival purposes. But the point is, the state government is now treating Walters as the sort of person everybody wanted to forget. Okay, so that was number 2. The third big change since Walters has left, and this is juicy. You're going to love this. It involves the state attorney general, Gentner Drummond, who is a Republican, who is running for governor, I believe. And also, weirdly, he's been pretty good about church-state separation. He sent out this press release the day Ryan Walters left. Look at this. Attorney General Gentner Drummond called for an investigative audit of the State Department of Education following the resignation of Ryan Walters. And in his letter to the Oklahoma State Auditor and Inspector Cindy Byrd, Drummond cited concerns raised by current and former OSDE staff regarding spending practices under Walters' tumultuous leadership. You are well aware that the former superintendent has a documented history of mismanaging tax dollars. Oh my God. Given the former superintendent's well-established history of mishandling tax dollars, combined with new and ongoing allegations of misspending, I am now ordering an investigative audit of the department. So basically, the Attorney General of the state wants to investigate where did all the money go in that department. Because you may have seen these stories over the past couple of years. Ryan Walters would go on like weekend trips to right-wing conferences where he would speak. Basically, it's a personal trip, but he's saying it's an education thing. He would bring a little posse with him, his little staffers that come along for the ride. Also, that's not the only complaint, though. He withheld $150 million meant for security enhancements from public schools. Like in the wake of school shootings, Oklahoma's legislature said, you know what would stop shootings? Oh, who said gun? Shut up. No, we need better doors. And they passed a bill saying, let's give public schools like $150 million to improve security. And we'll give them like X amount of dollars every year for 3 years. And Ryan Walters, who was in charge of dispersing that money, said, no, I'm not giving it all to you. No, you don't get to do that. What are you doing? He also refused to spend money that the legislator passed a bill about regarding asthma inhalers for children. He withheld that money from public schools. So now he's out of office. If they want to investigate his office, he can't stop them. So maybe the people of Oklahoma can finally find out what the hell he was doing, since it's not like he was spending his time helping kids. There is, however, by the way, there's one other thing. I think someone's mentioning it in the comments. He also said he was going to spend $3 million of his office's budget buying Trump Bibles to distribute to public schools. That never happened, by the way. So, like, where did he get all this money from? Where was it going? Do we know if it was spent wisely? Who knows? So we'll find out. The one catch to all of this is that at the end of an article that mentioned this very audit, look at what it said down here, the last paragraph of this Oklahoma Voice article. Kevin Stitt, the governor, in 2021, similarly requested an investigative audit of the education department while the predecessor to Walters was still in office. 4 years later, the auditor, Byrd, still hasn't released the completed audit. I don't know what that's about. I don't know why she didn't release it. I don't know if that meant it's not complete. But I will tell you this. The Attorney General of Oklahoma, who wants this audit of Ryan Walters, he's running for governor. And I think he wants to be able to show voters, based on whatever I've read of the guy, I think he would love to go to voters and say, I will go after corruption in our state, wherever it is, even if it's from my own party. And that's easy for him to do because he did not like Ryan Walters either. And so he has an incentive to make sure this audit gets completed on time, because I'm sure he would love to be able to produce it and get the news headlines that come with that say a Republican attorney general who's running for governor found corruption through a MAGA guy who ran the public education department. I'm sure he would love to do that. So maybe this audit does get done and does get published, made public. I would like to see it whenever it's done. But all of that is just fantastic news. Really quick hits, by the way, in addition to that. People who worked closely with Ryan Walters, they've been fired. Apparently, when Ryan Walters moved into the office for the State Department of Education, they had an Oklahoma Educators Hall of Fame, a bunch of pictures on the wall of superintendents and coaches who dedicated their lives to students and made a huge positive impact on those kids. What did Ryan Walters do with that Hall of Fame? He took it down. He took down all the pictures, maybe because he wanted to replace it with photos of himself. I don't know. But when Lyndall Fields came into that office, he ordered that Hall of Fame to go back up. So it's back up there. That's fantastic. I also enjoyed this quotation from a teacher. Check this out. They're celebrating. There's been several parties and several celebrations that just spontaneously popped up out of nowhere, Jamie Cole said. Teachers are walking around with smiles on their faces and lots of high fives. There is no sadness. I hear from the teachers across Oklahoma who have reached out to me. It's just nothing but pure joy and pure hope. So to me, that speaks volumes about where Ryan Walters' politics were and what he was doing. It was not landing well with educators at all. We just want what's best for kids. That's fantastic. And the best thing about all of this, look at this on Facebook. Teachers include this is run by the Oklahoma Rural Schools Coalition. They are having a party on Sunday to celebrate Ryan Walters leaving. They're having a big send-off bash. 250 people have already RSVP'd for this thing. And basically what that party is to mark Walters' resignation, and I'm quoting from their post, to send him off the only way he deserves, with hugs, laughter, music, and a whole lot of farewell signs. Beautiful. Beautiful. So this is what happens when ideology trumps instruction, right? Walter's time in office, what did he do? He turned classrooms into battlegrounds. He hollowed out trust in public schools. He made a mockery of the idea that people like him should serve children rather than whatever culture wars might get you a spot on Fox News that night. And so now there's this cleanup effort underway with new leadership. They're rewinding the agenda, maybe getting some accountability. That shows you just how corrosive this guy was. Can you imagine how bad things would be, how much worse things would be if Ryan Walters was made Secretary of Education for the country? I thought everything he was doing was to impress Donald Trump so that Trump would appoint him. And it's hilarious that Trump went with the wrestling lady instead. But I mean, I guess if there's any lesson to take from this, it's that Oklahoma cannot afford to stumble backwards again. They screwed up by electing this guy. They can't make that mistake again. The education system in Oklahoma is rough. Teachers are still fighting to be respected and supported. And like Walters may have been a symptom of a problem. He didn't create that in Oklahoma. Republicans have been hollowing out public education for a long time. But maybe now that he's gone, maybe that's a turning point. Maybe people are done with right-wing grifters who decide I'm going to damage the education system because I want that to be my legacy. Because Ryan Walters' parents are failures. Like, I don't know. Elections are going to be next year for this spot. And I don't know who's running yet. It's entirely possible someone who's exactly like Ryan Walters becomes a candidate and wins that seat again, because all you got to do is get past the Republican primary. That would be a mistake, but I hope people of Oklahoma learn their lesson. You don't want a guy like this in charge of education. He should be hosting a podcast from his basement that only 3 people listen to, and they're all crazy people. Like, that's what Ryan Walters wants to be doing. He doesn't want to help kids. He just wants to spout off and inject his poisonous beliefs into the larger ecosystem. But we'll see. We'll see who decides to run for that seat next year. Okay, I'm going to stop there with Ryan Walters. What other questions do we have here? The news site is a breath of fresh air. I know, right? How often do you say that about a state's Department of Education website? And why is it a breath of fresh air? Because it looks boring, as it should. That sounds like the happiest teacher on the planet. I got to say, I wish I was working at a school and in the teacher's lounge the day they all found out Ryan Walters was retiring. And I think he did it I think he announced it right after the school day, or at least that's when the first articles came out, like right after the school day ended, but maybe not. I wish I was in the room when all those teachers found out he was leaving. That's a good party right there. I know the guy personally who they put at the head of the education. So Lyndall Fields, he was the superintendent to the school I went to. Please tell me this comment ends with something good. How is he as your superintendent? Thank you, Den. Pretty good. Never shoved himself in front of us except the first day of graduation. I love it. I love that a politician in charge of anything is boring. They show up the bare minimum times, the beginning and the end. they say hello, and then they go back in their office and do work. Whatever criticisms I have of Joe Biden, he was boring. I never had to spend any days wondering, oh no, what's going to happen today? It was never that. It's like, okay, I may not like all the policies, and we can always talk about what Republicans are doing, but Biden was boring, as he should have been. And it's disturbing, and I hope younger people especially don't have this false impression that the president always needs to be the center of attention for everything, because that's very much what Trump has done for the time he's been in office. All right, I'm going to jump to a different story. Give me 1 second here. All right, let's get going. Let me talk about a very disturbing situation that is going on about a church you probably have not heard about. It's called the Kingdom of God Global Church, KOGGC. And we are now learning just how awful this place was. People who are following this story heard a lot of very problematic things over the past several months. But the weird thing is, this guy who ran this place has been on my radar for like a decade. And I feel like over the past week, only now have some people figured out just how bad this guy is. Okay. So let me show you this guy right here. That is David E. Taylor. He is the guy who is in charge of the Kingdom of God Global Church. And this lady right here, that is Michelle Brannon. And she was basically his second in command. Now, second in command of what? What the hell are we talking about? Well, get this. Back in August, the Department of Justice, like the Pam Bondi, absolutely broken Department of Justice, did something that's not bad. They said they raided the premises of this particular church. And what the headline is, 2 self-professed religious leaders who use physical and psychological abuse to coerce victims to solicit tens of millions in donations, federally charged and arrested. Oh my God, what were Taylor and Brannon doing? Check this out. Taylor and Brannon, according to the indictment, compelled their victims to work at their call centers and to work for Taylor as his armor bearers. Armor bearers were Taylor's personal servants who fulfilled Taylor's demands around the clock. Taylor and Brannon controlled every aspect of the daily living of their victims. Victims slept in the call center facility or in a ministry house, and Taylor and Brannon did not permit them to leave without permission. Wait, here's the more disturbing part. Taylor demanded that his armor bearers transport women from ministry houses, airports, and other locations to Taylor's location and ensured the women transported to Taylor took Plan B emergency contraceptives. The hell is this guy doing? So not only do we have a religious leader running like a theological Epstein's Island, he also has his version of Ghislaine Maxwell right next to him, helping him do it. That's what the allegation was. And that is very disturbing. And here's the thing, that happened in August. That was in August. It was a 23-page indictment, and it was extremely damning. This indictment, what they detailed, like, how do you prove to a judge, hey, we need to raid this guy's call centers because we have good reason to believe there's some really bad stuff going down here. They said that Taylor set financial goals for his workers. Basically, when we talk about this guy's ministry, it's not that he had a bunch of satellite church campuses. It's that he had his main call center and then he built other call centers and they lured people to work the phones. And according to the indictment, he set financial goals for them to reach through their phone calls. And if they didn't hit those marks, they were punished. And I will show this to you because of how disturbing it is. If I can find it here. I'll find it somewhere. Oh, here we go. Look at this from the indictment right over here. Number 14, 13, 14. If a call center worker or armor bearer does not fulfill Taylor's goals or disobeys an order, that individual is punished. Punishment includes humiliation, sleep deprivation, forced repentance, additional work, food restrictions, physical assaults, and threats of divine judgment in the form of sickness, accidents, death, and eternal damnation. Oh my God. What the hell is going on here? And some of the threats were extremely direct. Look at the text messages they got a hold of. Look at this. Letter B. On or about May 5th, 2021, at 12:30 a.m., Taylor texted his current armor bearer tasked with communicating his orders to KOGGC staff, whose identity is known to the grand jury. Look at what Taylor said to this guy. You will have to raise $164,000 today. Each hour you fall behind, consequences will start. We will mess with the food. You will fast from the regular food or abstain for a while normally. As of now, there's a 21-day peanut butter and jelly regimen. He spelled that wrong, like before. Those who do not push in their calls individually and as a team with the right amount of people and closing numbers at 6 p.m., they don't eat dinner at all. If they do good afterward this time, then at the end of the night, they may get a snack before bed, but not much. And this regimen will go on every day for 21 days until they obey. Take away the food. There will be other consequences. We must make them fast and pray. Holy crap. So that's just one of the text messages that DOJ definitely had. And where did all this money go? They're raising hundreds of thousands of dollars every day. Guess what else? It seems like the DOJ knew what they had bought with that money. Look at this list. What were they buying with all that money from 2018 onward? Mercedes-Benz, some Bentleys. What else we got? A boat? They bought a $100,000 boat. 5 ATVs, because, what's one going to do for you? 2 jet skis, 1 jet ski trailer. Got to have the trailer. Oh, they did that again. 125 pounds of super colossal red king crab legs, 6 seafood shears, and 30 crab cutters. Listen, I'm vegetarian. I don't know how much that actually is or what all that stuff does. I don't know why it costs over $10,000. That seems like a lot. And then, you got to have the bulletproof cars. Why do you want a Bentley if you can't bulletproof it? So this is what they're spending the money on. You know what they were telling the people on the phones when they were soliciting donations? You know what they were telling them to tell the prospective donors? Tell them the money is going to providing water wells overseas and, ironically, supporting victims of human trafficking. So why are we talking about this today? Because this all happened in August. Well, after that indictment happened, there was some back and forth between the lawyers for Brannon, the woman, and the government regarding where should she live while this trial goes on. Because she wanted to live in Michigan. She wanted to be released on bail and live in Michigan. And her lawyers argued, listen, she's not the problem here. She's just, and I'm quoting, she's another person subject to Taylor's influence and control at a more supervisory level. Like, she's the victim in all this. Why are you blaming her for doing any of this? Don't call her Ghislaine. That's weird. And the government responded by saying, no, We do not want her released on bail because we don't trust this woman. We have reason not to trust that she's going to like listen to the rules. They literally said, we cannot reasonably assure her appearance in court, the integrity of this proceeding, or the safety of any person or the community if she's set free. That's what they argued to the judge. But here's what's weird. When they were trying to make the case to the judge for why she should not be released on bail, we learned a lot more about what was happening in this KOGGC cult. And this is what made news this week. It's like, it's not even a court ruling. It's a letter from the lawyers for the government saying, don't let this woman out on bail. Here's why. And people got a glimpse of what they said in this like filing. And they're like, oh my goodness, what the hell is going on there? That's the part that is disturbing. One of the things they said in the filing is that there are 57 workers and victims for KOGGC. And one of the reasons that's a big deal is this. Check this out. This is from the recent filing. Look at line 3 right here, 2 and 3. Brannon said she lived with her son and 6 coworkers. They were not 6 coworkers, 57 coworkers. Also, Brannon lied to pretrial services when she stated that 2 of the workers living with her in Tampa were her employers. Like, she's not at the top of the pyramid here. She's working for them. No, she wasn't. She oversaw all of them. So that's disturbing. Here is another thing they mentioned. How did she lure all those victims to work in this place? As part of their scheme to coerce the workers' labor, Brannon and Taylor use various methods of fraud to establish trust and loyalty and to keep the workers laboring in hopes of an eventual payoff. Taylor first lured in workers with promises of fulfilling their spiritual hunger, making them feel intensely loved and special through love bombing, and promising them a unique closeness to God by serving God through this thing. So he's basically lying to all these people, like, work with me, I'll help you get closer to God. And they fell for it. And this part is extremely disturbing because when you started working for them, and if you didn't do what they wanted you to do, check out what happened. They rebuked you. But what does that mean? These rebukings were both humiliating and terrifying. During a rebuking, Taylor, Brannon, or a worker instructed by Taylor or Brannon got inches from the face of another worker and screamed at them, calling them names like stupid, dumb, wicked, the N-word, Lucifer, etc. Many times workers were forced to kneel and repent to Taylor and God. Rebukings could last a few minutes to a few hours depending on the situation. The rebuking, sometimes coupled with the threat of being put out into a garage or a homeless shelter, constituted psychological coercion designed to compel the workers' labor. So they had to follow the rules or else. Let me show you another text message because it turns out Brannon, the woman, she was sending a lot of text messages to these workers. And actually, here are some of those text messages, easier to see right here. On this date, Brannon sent a text message to several members of the media team. Media team, no going to sleep until this video is done. Another one, she was unhappy with how a worker was soliciting donations. She sent a text, did you rebuke him for this? He needs to be raked over the coals for this. He can die for this. What the hell? Another one. If after 7 to 14 days there is no change, it's the public shelter for 1 solid month. And look at this last one here. For people who got low numbers of how much money they were pulling in, you will be punished constantly until you obey. So these are text messages the Ghislaine of the operation was sending to some of their victims. So, disturbing. There's one other thing I got to share with you, and I'm sorry I have to share this with you, but it is a part of this, which is that I mentioned that the feds raided these call centers in August. That's when they took these people into custody. Well, check this out, because this is also new information we did not know. In addition, in executing search warrants in August at the house in Tampa and at other KOGGC locations, agents recovered the following evidence supporting the forced labor allegations. Oh, look at this. An explicit video sent to Taylor by a female worker in which the worker cries and apologizes for the delay in completing the assignment, referring to the video, and states that she understands that she needs to do this and cannot delay. Oh, look at this too. There's evidence that Taylor frequently solicited and received sexually explicit photos and videos from multiple female workers, adding up to thousands of such photos and videos. Oh, look at this. There are notebooks documenting worker schedules for making calls. Okay, specific quotas and schedules for things like cooking, cleaning, and watching children. That means there were children on these premises. So, very, very disturbing stuff. And to that last point, look right over here. Even more disturbingly, after the execution of search warrants at the properties, the government confirmed that multiple minor children of workers lived in the call centers and or properties. Some of these children have been separated from their parents for years. One minor, who was recently interviewed, corroborated aspects of the forced labor scheme and reported her own emotional, psychological, and sometimes physical trauma caused by her involvement. So all of this did not come out. Not all of this, not all the details. It didn't come out in the indictment. It came out in the small filing that the government made to the judge about why this lady should not be set free on bail. And that got a lot of headlines this week. One of the other things they mentioned here, check this out. Furthermore, the manner in which the funds are currently solicited demonstrates the organization's view of the government and the judicial process. They don't care about the law or the judges. For example, there was a worker soliciting donations during a broadcast who said, "We're in a war. We're in a war, and it is time for you to decide if you are a warrior or you are not." Yikes. That sounds intense. And they also pointed out, the lawyers for the government said this lady has a lot of access to cash. Just because she's shut out of the ministry's bank accounts, she has access to PayPal. She has access to Venmo. Like, she's going to have a lot of money. And she also has access to a lot of supporters who would probably help her intimidating the current members of the ministry. And given that she's loyal to Taylor, and given that there's evidence Taylor apparently told workers, God will kill officials, referring to the Michigan Attorney General's office, and given that Taylor told those workers that if the government officials raid the place, quote, you kill them on contact if they come in here with that foolishness, they need to die. For all those reasons, the government said maybe we should not let this woman free. And this is how they kind of closed their entire brief here. This is on page 40 of 42. Thus, given Brannon's own reign of terror over her victims, her leadership role in the forced labor and money laundering conspiracies, her close personal and criminal relationship with Taylor, and her years of following Taylor's directions with fierce loyalty, she's a danger to the community if released. So that's what they told the judge. And after all that, guess what the judge did? Guess what the judge did? The judge basically said, I'm going to let her go free in Michigan, but she's under house arrest and she has to follow a long list of rules. Rules like you can't leave the house, you can't make contact with people, whatever. I will assume, I don't know if the judge deserves the benefit of the doubt here. I will assume the judge's restrictions are severe enough that it's not like he's just letting her go free in Michigan, that there's a reason behind that. I don't know enough about it, so I won't comment on it. But the point is, some of these details that I just shared with you, they went viral this week. But a lot of the details were known months ago after the indictment happened, and even more of the details were known for years. Like, look at what people who used to work for this organization have been saying here. If I can pull this up. Like, there was a reporter who spoke to a former member of this cult, and look at what he said. Driving Taylor, washing his car, cooking and cleaning were all part of Ware's responsibilities he did without pay. Nearly every moment of his life revolved around Taylor, with little to no time in his day reserved for himself or his family. My ex-wife and I were too afraid to even verbally speak amongst one another because we thought that would be speaking against God. And that's the way that David wants it. He also said, my children have suffered trauma, emotionally speaking, especially after I had left. There were things they had witnessed happen to their mom, things being said to their mom that I've had to help them with emotionally and mentally. So it's a lot of disturbing stuff in there. And there's one thing I didn't address yet, which is I said this guy has been on my radar for years and years because the indictment happened in August, but I pulled this up from like 10 years ago. What year was this? 2016. Look at this. Back in the day, when David E. Taylor ran Joshua Media Ministries International, he posted this picture on Facebook, and it's some old lady clearly in the hospital. And I'm not going to read all this, but look at the top headline. Raised from the dead, David E. Taylor commands her to live through sending a text message through Facebook, releasing the supernatural resurrection power of God. She lives. He basically says he sent this woman a Facebook message and she was going to die, but his Facebook message is the reason she lived. And by the way, that message also says he cured her diabetes. Did that make any sense? Of course it did not. And the Christian Post, a very conservative outlet, they posted about that. Pastor David E. Taylor claims he raised woman from dead through Facebook message. And I love and appreciate this paragraph. The Christian Post reached out to Joshua Media Ministries International on Monday and requested an interview with the woman and her family. A representative said they were unable to divulge personal information about the family, but explained that they would pass along this reporter's contact information and would reach out if the family wished to talk. So here's a conservative Christian outlet saying, really? You resurrected her over Facebook? Can we talk to her? And the ministry's like, no. Why would you want to do that? That sounds weird. Not only that, there is, I don't have all the video of this, but in 2015, you could look this up if you want to, David E. Taylor was accused of financial fraud, financial corruption. And he sat for a deposition, and that deposition that was hours long went public. And there were things he said in that deposition that were so messed up. For example, the attorney's like, hey, on your 2012 tax return, who's Brooklyn Mitchell? And he's like, Brooklyn? I don't know. You don't know who Brooklyn Mitchell is? No. You have no idea? No. Never heard of that person? Brooklyn Mitchell? Nope. On your 2012 tax return, you claimed Brooklyn Mitchell as a dependent through an exemption. But he doesn't know who that person is. That was interesting. There was another thing in the deposition where they were like, so you said you have a church ministry over here. Is that really a ministry? And he's like, it's a gathering place for our ministry where I bring in different leaders and also the staff that we have as a place of, maybe resort and teaching? And the attorney's like, wait, a resort? And he's like, yeah, a resort where we teach and train. Because he basically bought a luxury mansion. And he's like, that's my church. And by the way, when the lawyer was like, what's the address of your new place here? He had no idea. There was one last thing he said in the deposition that was hilarious, which is they looked at his financial records and they were saying, so in June of 2014, you spent $3,500. I'll show you this so you can look at it with me. You spent $3,500 from the ministry to Versace in the Bahamas. Yes, I'm sure that's right. So you don't see that there's any problem when you're ministering to the poor, the sick, the needy, to be appearing in Louis Vuitton and Versace? Well, that ain't something I purchase all the time. Well, it looks like you did several times. And then he says, I'm a very frugal person when it comes to this. I go to the right places to get a lot of suits. And if I get some from those places, you don't see that in the bill. And the attorney says, I don't see Macy's. To which he responds, no, you don't see that because Macy's don't have the kind of suits that I wear. You're not seeing the cheaper suits on my record because I don't buy them from there because they don't fit me right. They don't have the kind I like. So I got to go to the high brand, the luxury brands that cost thousands of dollars. Beautiful. Just unbelievable guy. And I want to show you. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry. I'm going through my list of what else did Taylor do before the Super Bowl in 2014. He said God gave him a sign that the Denver Broncos would win. The Broncos lost to the Seahawks 43-8. So he was wrong about that. Didn't get called out on that. My favorite thing, he was building a new call center in Texas. And when he posted about that on his website, he was announcing, yeah, we're building a new call center. Let me show you what he posted on his website. At the very top, he's bragging about his new place. This is a very weird time cube, space cube type of website. There he is, Houston, Texas, my testimony. I'm going to scroll down to this section because it's messed up and weird. But this paragraph is kind of amazing. This is not a labor cult or a cult of any kind. They are liars. Listen, man, if you have to say at any point, this is not a labor cult, I kind of have questions about your labor cult. And then he says, for example, they always try to flip the script. For example, Martin Luther King fought for equal rights, but the Caucasian culture made him out to be a communist person, like he was doing something wrong. They've even tried to disparage my name and character as a black man through false sexual allegations. He posted that a while back, and now that we know the details, buddy, this has nothing to do with your race. This is just bad. If you are also going down this rabbit hole with me, there is a gospel singer named Vicky Yohe, Yohe. She once dated Taylor. She then wrote a book with the subtitle, Free from a Hidden Cult, all about Taylor. And she said of him, I'm quoting directly from her book, he preys on women. He does not honor women. Women are just a vagina. She also said he violated his own supposed ethics by having, quote, sexual relations with more than 40 women, many of them in his ministry. And he told this woman, his girlfriend at the time, that if she ever went public with these stories, she would, quote, get cancer. And she also says in her book that he made women send him not safe for work pictures, videos of themselves, which he could then later use to blackmail them in an act of revenge porn. So that's where we're at. That's where we were at. And now this guy is indicted, and we will see what happens. So if you're curious, Taylor and Brannon, if they are convicted of the crimes they are accused of, they could face up to 20 years in prison. It could be more, but it's probably unlikely to be more. They are both in their 50s now, so that's basically like a life sentence at this point. But I think, I mean, more than anything, this is not just about two religious cult leaders. This is about what happens when you have unchecked religious authority and it's allowed to spread in a country that refuses to scrutinize religion the way it deserves to be scrutinized. Because Taylor's empire of abuse, this was happening for years. It was happening in plain sight. But I think because it's a Christian ministry, a lot of people were willing to give him the benefit of the doubt and look the other way. And now the result is like, it looks from the indictment that this is like a human trafficking thing built on scripture. Right? And this is religious privilege, if nothing else, because men of God who call themselves prophets, they're so often exposed as predators. Was it last week we talked about Trump's ally, Robert Morris, and everything he did? I mean, even if there's justice, even if these people go to jail at this point, it's not going to undo all the trauma they inflicted on the workers that they took in. But maybe if they do go to jail, maybe that's some sort of beginning of a reckoning for the people who suffered under their hands. So we'll see what happens. I will leave it at that. What questions do you have right now? So much for their supposed sexual ethics. Yeah, anytime they are loudly boasting, anytime anybody is boasting loudly about how pure they are, by the way, more on that in a different story coming up. The louder they are, I mean, the more people should question it. Thank you for the donations, by the way. Yeah, from the Think of the Children crowd. Yeah, they never think of the children. They never care about they don't care about other people at that point. How does one force repentance? You know, I saw that phrase, forced repentance, in that indictment. And I'm like, I don't know what that means, but just if you don't pray, I mean, at the best case scenario, if you don't pray in front of me, I'm going to punish you more. But also, I don't know if that gets any worse than that. And I'm afraid to ask. I don't want to know the details. Court documents accuse Taylor and Brannon of coercing followers to apply for EBT benefits used by church leaders while staff were, so food stamps basically, while staff were allegedly denied food and rest if they didn't meet fundraising quotas. I believe you are correct in that. And I didn't say that in the piece, but I do believe that is correct. Yes. Disturbing. These are text messages, as in the things they were comfortable saying on record. What were they saying not on record? Very, very good point. I assume they did not think anyone would see those text messages. But yeah, what else were they saying when they thought cameras were off and no one was ever going to get a hold of it? It's scary to think about. I'd bet money that this investigation began under Biden, but it's interesting that Bondi allowed it to continue. It really is. I am very much wondering, because that press release from the Department of Justice, it included a quotation, if I can find it here. It included a quotation from, I think, Harmeet Dillon, who is very much a MAGA cultist. And she said in that press release, combating human trafficking is a top priority for the Department of Justice, which is a good thing to say, but also this is the same party that's hiding the Epstein files right now. So, you know, you are right. It is possible this investigation began under Biden. It is continuing under other workers at the Department of Justice. And it's very possible Pam Bondi and the other MAGA people, they don't know every single case that's being pursued. And if a case doesn't directly conflict with something Trump wants, they might not have any reason to stop it, right? So that's entirely possible. That is awesome news. All right, we're finishing up. I got 2 more stories for you, and then I will end it. Give me a second here. Glad to see that. Hey, Den, while I have you here, how did they get 3 runs? Is that a home run or did something else happen? Anyone can tell me in the comments. what happened. I'm going to pull up this other story. Oh, there we go. Go, Ian. Excellent. Okay, we'll get back to the Cubs in a little bit. All right. So I have a story that is actually good news in the legal world, and it has nothing to really do with atheism per se, but it's a big deal, and I was excited to see this story. So let me give you some backstory to make this make sense. In April of 2022, Democrats in Colorado, with very little Republican support, they passed a law establishing free preschool across the state starting in 2023. So, awesome idea. Children can access, as far as I can tell, they can access half-day preschool programs at no cost to their parents. And the governor's office said at the time it's going to save families an average of $4,300 a year in childcare. It gives kids a head start in their education. Like, awesome, awesome opportunity for families who may not otherwise be able to afford that kind of program. And since the program launched in August of 2023, the most recent report I could find was from 2024. It said it's a $322 million program. It has helped 40,000 4-year-olds attend 1,900 participating schools, 40 of which are religious, because they were allowed to be part of this program. Okay, now in order to receive funding for this universal preschool, the schools who wanted to participate had to offer some basic rules, right? Like you have to have credentialed staff, things like that. But one of the rules said you can't discriminate against students who sign up for your program. They have to accept kids regardless of their family's race, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, whatever. Now, that rule, the don't be bigots rule, that led the Denver Catholic Archdiocese and two of its parishes, specifically the St. Mary Catholic Parish in Littleton, Colorado, and the St. Bernadette Catholic Parish in Lakewood, those three entities sued the state of Colorado. Basically, they wanted taxpayer money to be able to run their own preschool, but they definitely wanted to say no to kids who had same-sex parents, or if there's a trans anybody involved, right? And their argument is that Catholicism requires us to reject students who have gay parents and staffers who are in same-sex relationships. And they said, we can't recognize trans people because that would mean admitting they are people. And the Catholic Church doesn't believe that. They wanted to ban students from wearing the opposite sex's uniform or using what they believed were the wrong bathrooms, which again, listen, I'm all for trans rights, but I honestly don't know how much that is all happening in a preschool. Honestly, I'm surprised they're using the bathroom at preschool for some of those kids. But they also wanted to prioritize accepting kids from Catholic families over, say, Jewish ones. They wanted their own people at their parishes, even though the law said you're allowed to accept kids from your own parishes. Like you can do that. But you know what the goal was here. This is all about their ability to discriminate against LGBTQ people. They said in their lawsuit, a Catholic school cannot treat a same-sex couple as a family equivalent to the natural family. So, I mean, there's an obvious solution to this. No one's forcing you to do any of this. Just don't take the state's money. You don't have to apply for this program. You're the Catholic Church. Go to the Vatican, take a bar of gold or whatever, and go back and you have the money. Like, you don't need to be part of this. And if families want to send their kids to a Catholic preschool, they have every right to do so. No one's making families participate in this program. So the archdiocese could totally do whatever it was doing before the law went into effect. And the Catholic Church knew this too. And this really is one of the funniest things about this entire lawsuit, because the Catholic Church is like, we don't like that argument. We don't like the fact that you're just telling us we don't have to participate. So here's what they argued. They said that when Colorado passes their universal pre-K program, it's bad for business. They said if preschool is free everywhere else in the state, well, then no one's going to pay to go to a Catholic preschool. And if our enrollment goes down, well, then we got to charge our other members even more money. And come on, why don't state officials care about our bottom line? I'm not mischaracterizing this. Look at what they wrote in the actual lawsuit. Look at number 22. Many families who send their children to schools in the archdiocese are of limited means. 20% of the families who send their children to our schools qualify for free and reduced price school meals program. By creating a program that provides universal funding for preschool programs, Colorado has cornered the market for preschool services. Any providers who don't participate in the UPK program will be severely disadvantaged, since they will be forced to charge significantly higher prices than the participating programs, both secular and religious, which are not religiously barred from participating in the program. This is especially true when it comes to serving the 20% of families who get the free or reduced price lunches. So they're literally saying, if you help all these people, why would anyone give us money to not help them? Come on. So this is seriously the argument they were making. And it's not just the Catholic Church that was saying this. The right-wing legal group, Beckett, which represented the Catholic Church here, this is what they said. This ban, apparently Colorado had a ban on Catholic churches participating. They did not. This ban forces parents to choose between paying out of pocket for the cost of faith-based preschool or receiving a free preschool education at any other private school in Colorado. It also hurts the ability of schools like St. Mary's and St. Bernadette's to compete with other free preschools that can offer free preschool education. Why is that a tongue twister? But seriously, first, it's not a ban. No one banned Catholics from participating. Catholics just decided, we don't want to play by your rules, and therefore that's mean. Why would you be mean to us? I do appreciate that in the marketplace of ideas, the Catholic Church is fully admitting we are losers. Neutral rules are unfair to us, therefore it's illegal. Therefore, your rules need to change, not us. Never us. So it's the epitome of like broken brain religious thinking for you. Here's a program that could lift up so many families across the state that could not afford early childhood education, which would help students get a leg up on their formal schooling. And that's a problem for these Catholics because they prioritize their own bigotry and ignorance over the needs of children. So it's not that the archdiocese was suing to end the program. They just wanted to like have their cake and eat it too. They wanted to be able to discriminate against gay people and trans people while also getting taxpayer money to run their preschools. So, long story short, after all that, in June of 2024, a district judge finally weighed in on this. And the judge basically ruled in favor of the state. The judge said the law, the universal pre-K law, they're not discriminating against religious schools by saying everyone has to abide. It's not discrimination to say don't discriminate. But he did say by allowing Catholic schools to prioritize Catholic kids over Jewish kids, which was allowed, the state was kind of allowing a faith-based exemption to the rule. You were giving faith-based schools some kind of special treatment, and the state couldn't have it both ways. So the judge said the state basically needed to decide, do you think faith-based schools should be allowed to bend the rules, or do the rules apply to everybody? Right? Now, the Catholic schools called that a victory. It just wasn't a complete victory. So they appealed the decision. They said, we still don't have an answer. Can we be bigots or not? Right now, we still can't get access to state money. And what's interesting is Colorado went back to the law and they said, you know what? Why don't we just remove the non-discrimination rules altogether for the following year? They said, we don't want to screw over this program. So why don't we just take the hit so that this lawsuit goes away? Why don't we just say, if you're a religious organization and you have religious rules, fine. If that's what it takes to keep the program alive, fine. But the case was still in court, and that meant things could have ended really, really badly, right? So now here's the good news. And I'll just jump to the head of this if I can. Let me jump ahead here. Here we go. Let me make sure I'm pulling up the right bit. Yes. So the Catholic Church, they appealed this case. It went up to the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. And this week, they ruled on this case. And check this out. This case is different from other cases we were looking at. The department did not exclude faith-based preschools from participating in universal preschool. In fact, they welcomed and actively solicited their participation. The only relevant limitation on any preschool's participation is the non-discrimination requirement, which applies to all preschools regardless of whether they are religious or secular. So the inclusion of religious schools as participants in this program makes it different from other cases you were trying to compare it to. And the parish preschools tried to blur this by equating the non-discrimination requirement with a restriction on public funds being used for religious purposes. I know that's getting confusing. Basically, what the judges said is, whatever the arguments are that you're being treated unfairly, that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. And the Catholic Church argued, you are giving preference to some kids, like who have individualized education programs and are in Head Start. You're giving preference to kids with disabilities, kids who are poor, and that violates your non-discrimination rules. So you shouldn't allow them to apply to us either. And these judges said something that I really appreciated here. Check this out. When they were talking about the Head Start and the non-discrimination rules, these provisions do not speak in general terms about ignoring disability status or income level. They specifically concern children who have a disability and are low income. In other words, he says here, like, when we are saying schools can take that stuff into consideration, we're trying to make the program for preschoolers more inclusive. We want you to take in people with disabilities and people who are poor. We want you to do that because the program is meant to be inclusive. They're not excluding you by saying you can't discriminate against people. What are you talking about? Basically, what the 10th Circuit said is there's no religious hostility in this law. So they're not discriminating against you. This is what they said at the very end to summarize this thing. Oh my God, where did it go? Yes, here's what they said at the very end. This is a case about preschoolers. No one would reasonably mistake the views of preschool students for those of their school. And while we must give deference to an association's view of what would impair its religious expression, that does not mean that we must buy the argument that mere acceptance of a member from a particular group is enough. Basically saying if a gay kid or a gay couple sends their kid to your preschool and the law says you got to take them, that's not suggesting you're violating your religious beliefs. Teachers and staff are the ones responsible for your religious message and developing the curriculum, not the children. So the fact that you might have to take kids who come from same-sex couples, a couple with a transgender member, you have to take kids who at that young age may be LGBTQ, like, Who cares? That doesn't violate your Catholic beliefs. No one's asking you to violate your Catholic beliefs. And the lawyers now are so mad about this because the judge is not buying the argument. The justices are not buying the argument that this isn't discrimination. Look at what the Beckett Fund said. Colorado is punishing religious schools and the families they serve for following their faith. The 10th Circuit's decision allows the state's anti-religious gamesmanship to continue. We will keep fighting to ensure that every preschooler in Colorado can access quality, affordable education. That's not true because you're literally fighting to complain about this program. The state's not anti-religious. Basically, the entire law said we want as many kids to take free preschool as possible. You know what? If you're a religious organization that wants to participate, come on down. We will also cover your funds. We'll cover your costs as well. So they're not punishing anyone who's religious. And honestly, the law has changed, so they're literally not punishing anyone who's religious. And this court's saying just because you got to take in a kid you don't necessarily like, for whatever reason, that's not religious discrimination. That's just playing by the rules, and everyone's playing by the same set of rules. So what are you mad about? So that's a wonderful, wonderful decision. And I think I also appreciated one other thing these judges said somewhere here. There it is. Check this out. This is near the end. Look at what they're saying about the program itself. The department has made every effort to encourage faith-based preschools to participate in the program, short of granting them an unlawful exemption from the non-discrimination requirement. As a result, 40 faith-based preschools are part of the program. The program is a model example of maintaining neutral and generally applicable non-discrimination laws while nonetheless trying to accommodate the exercise of religious beliefs. So the judges here are saying the state's doing everything right, and they are welcoming religious groups into the mix. And as a result, we can find no reason to rule that the state, the department, has violated your free exercise rights. Like, stop complaining, stop whining, nothing's wrong. So it's not just a victory for Colorado. I think this is a rebuke of the Catholic Church's attempt to use religion to hurt people while using taxpayer dollars, right? This was never about faith. This is about preserving the right to discriminate against LGBTQ people while taking taxpayer dollars. And by the judges affirming that universal education must remain universal, the courts are making it clear Colorado has every right to help families the way it sees fit without having to worry about protecting the prejudices of powerful religious organizations. Like, I'm glad the judges saw through the charade. Catholic leaders were not persecuted. They were asked to follow the same rules as everyone else. And the fact that they were mad about that shows you how weak their religious freedom arguments really are. Colorado shows us that public money should serve the public good and not bankroll bigotry. So thank goodness this happened. I'm glad to see it. I will stop there with this story. Any questions here? The don't be bigots rule seems to offend them. Probably part of the think of the children crowd. Yeah, it's always surprising to me. Anytime, like, oh, we have to pay for health insurance for our employees. Hobby Lobby's like, no, we don't want to do that if that means some of them might get birth control. So we must ruin it for everybody. Like, no, it's always my religious beliefs matter more than your rights, than your health, than anything. And that's the story of conservative religion in this country for the past couple of decades now. Nobody signed a non-compete contract with the church. I love that argument. They're so mad that they're like, well, if we don't participate, people won't want to come to us. What does that say about the product you're offering? I mean, if you had a better product, they would pay for it. That's how private colleges work, right? If someone's offering you a scholarship, though, you go to where the scholarship is. And by the way, plenty of churches have said, we'll be part of the program. Somehow, 40 religious preschools have opened, and they're fine with it. But the Catholic Church is like, you're hurting religion. No, they're not. Everyone else is fine with it. It's you who's the problem. All this when, in fact, very few LGBTQ parents, yes, would choose a Catholic school in the first place. I know you're right about that. I would be shocked if if same-sex couples sent their kids to a Catholic preschool. But I say that, and yet there are same-sex teachers in same-sex relationships who go work at Catholic schools. There are parents who send their kids to those schools, and then they're surprised when the school's like, sorry, you're endorsing sin, so we can't take in your kid. It does happen. Not frequently, but it does happen. And it's not because of any good reason per se. They're not like knowing hypocrites. It's because a lot of cultural Catholics, they grew up in a Catholic family, they're familiar with the Catholic Church, and it never occurs to them that the church is like a bigotry spewing organization. It's surprising to them that like their Catholic Church is spewing the same bigotry they might hear from other places. So it does happen, but it is weird. The response says everything about their zero-sum view of the universe. Yeah, why can't we all have nice things? Because I don't get a nicer thing. I don't get everything I want. So I want to make it rough for everybody. It's unbelievable how heartless they are. All right, one more story. Let me pull it up for you. You're going to like this one. All right. Dan, what's my update? As I pull up this last thing. No change. Excellent. Okay. I got one last story for you here, and it involves this guy. His name is Josh Shriver. I believe he's 11 years old. I don't know anymore, but he is a state representative um, in the state of Michigan. He's a lawmaker there. He's been there for a couple of years. And as you can see, he is a Republican. I mean, he looks like a Republican, but he also is a Republican. But I've talked about this guy before for a few reasons. Let me remind you of why this guy sometimes makes headlines. For example, I think the last time I talked about him was in 2023. This is a tweet he made there was a Baphomet, a satanic temple statue or a little holiday sculpture outside the Capitol because they allowed a nativity scene, and some Satanists decided to put up a thing as well. What did Shriver say? In the name of Jesus Christ, I rebuke the sadistic, satanic Baphomet goat altar at our Michigan Capitol. Amen. And you could see right there. Is that it? That I don't know if that's the one, but it's scary. Okay, but this is what he was wasting his time on. There was also this tweet: make gay marriage illegal again. This is not remotely controversial nor extreme. That's from December of 2024. So this guy is not a decent human. He's just like, nope, I just want everyone who's not me to suffer. When reporters asked him why he wanted to ban gay marriage, this is what he said to the Detroit News. Asked why he wants to ban gay marriage, Shriver, who's in his first House term, responded to the Detroit News by referencing a series of Bible passages. Jesus defines marriage as between a man and a woman. In a text message Monday evening, Shriver noted the U.S. Supreme Court has the power to overturn a past ruling, which, yeah, they very much do, and it's disturbing because we know they're trying to overturn Obergefell. But also, that's not the same thing as just saying gay marriage should be illegal. Like this guy, if he were dictator, he would do away with marriage equality in a heartbeat. So that's not great. Here's another thing he posted along the same lines because he made a lot of news for that tweet. And then he posted this on Facebook. And I just want you to read what he said. And then keep in mind, I do believe this man is married. This is what he said on Facebook. Here. The mouth and anus are not reproductive organs. Sodomy is indeed a crime against God and natural order. This sin releases plagues of disease, promiscuity, and perversion into our local communities. Repent, yield to Christ, be fruitful and multiply. And listen, I know some of that you have all heard before from other fundamentalist Christian preachers and stuff, but just that first part here, the mouth is not a reproductive organ. My condolences to his wife. Have fun with that one. Okay. By the way, Den points out right here, don't forget his rap. You are correct. I think he did release a rap video because all of these conservatives always think they are rappers in some sense. There's one other thing I want to share with you, which is from last month. Okay. Republicans in Michigan recently introduced a bill. Check this out. Don't worry, I'm getting to where I'm going with this in just a second. A group of GOP lawmakers recently introduced a House bill called the Anti-Corruption of Public Morals Act that would ban all online pornography, including depictions or descriptions of trans people. Descriptions of trans people. That is, so if you are at a website and they're like, what's a trans person? Well, here's the definition. They're like, that's too much. That's online lewdness. The bill makes it a felony, punishable by up to 25 years in prison, to distribute or make available prohibited content, including what it describes as a disconnection between biology and gender. So if you say anything about trans people, like they're people, they want to make it a felony and send you to prison for it. And what did our friend Josh say? He's the lead sponsor of this bill. Don't make it, don't share it, don't view it. And then he added, he made a call to add porn distributors to the sex offender registry. He said the measure was a tool to defend children and safeguard our communities. So even if everything is consensual and above board, he wants you to go to prison. Obviously, that violates free speech laws, First Amendment laws in general. It's just an insane thing to do. It's not going to get signed into law. Thankfully, Democrats have some power in Michigan. So this is all about symbolism. This is what matters to them. So where are we going with this beautiful story? You guys, let me just show you the headline that appeared in the Detroit Metro Times just this week. I'm trying to draw out the tension here because you deserve something nice. Michigan Republican pushing pornography ban linked to porn site. Oh my God. Let us read through this together. A Republican state lawmaker, it's that guy, leading a campaign to ban porn in Michigan, appears to have had an account on a pornographic hookup website that promised users they could find sex and get laid tonight. Data reviewed by the Metro Times showed that an account linked to his personal AOL email address appeared in a data breach from fling.com, a pornographic dating site that features live webcams and promised users they could find sex and get laid tonight. An archived version of the site shows it provided access to explicit photos, videos, and live sex webcams. It's always the people you most expect. And didn't I say a little bit ago that in another story that the louder they talk about sexual ethics and the importance of the family unit or whatever, the more you got to wonder, what are these people hiding? Now, given that all this was said, I will criticize something about this reporting because, check this out. Where did they get this information from? The leaked information, verified by a cybersecurity database, snooze base, lists Shriver's email address and a profile indicating his sexual interests, including fetish. That's not an interest. That's like saying, what sexual interest do you have? Sex. Okay. And group sex, one word. But look at this. This is the part that I was, the account was last accessed on September 11th, 2010, because never forget, according to breach data. So, if this is when the security breach happened, they accessed this on 2010. That doesn't mean that's the last time he got into the account. But as far as we know, 2010 is the last time we got into this account. And if my math is right, I think that's when this guy was like 18, 19 years old, which is to say, okay, so he's some horny college kid who probably thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool if this thing actually, what if there are hot ladies in my area waiting to meet me? And he got an account and like, you know what? I don't care. I don't care. I don't care what this kid was doing after college. I honestly don't even think it's any of my business right now. And it's entirely possible. I'm not even trying to defend this dude. It's entirely possible that he had this religious conversion where he became a fundamentalist Christian after college, sometime between 2010 and 2020. Maybe somewhere in there he became super religious and fundamentalist, in which case it's not really even hypocrisy then. Maybe he was one way when he was 19 and he's not that way now. Now, if you told me he's accessing this website now, I feel like this would be a bigger story, and it's absolutely then. We're all within our rights to go after this guy for hypocrisy. But if the best thing you can give me is that this guy accessed this site in 2010, I don't know. I don't think that's that big of a deal. I honestly don't care. I don't care what this guy was watching on his computer, what he was into, whether he succeeded. None of my business. I don't care. I know it's kind of funny given where he is today, but it feels like this is an article meant to expose hypocrisy, but I don't really necessarily think it does. Now, if everything I just said is accurate, and I am Josh Shriver, what would your response be at this point? I think if I were him, I would point out to these people, listen, there is no hiding the fact that that was my email and that was my account. That was me in college. Listen, I did a lot of dumb things in college. Joining this site, which was free, I assume, whatever. Like, you could say that. You could just say, yeah, I joined it in college. I thought it was funny. Honestly, I don't find it funny anymore. That's not who I am now. And I think this whole thing would go away. And I think that would actually be a totally normal thing to say. What did Shriver actually say? Shriver, one of the state's most outspoken culture war conservatives, claimed in an email that the records were forged. This is fake. I never heard of this website or accessed it. My dude, they have everything about you. It's linked to like your home address. What do you do? No, it's not forged. You think someone faked your account, but like used all of your personal information to do what? You were a nobody when you were 19. By the way, none of us were anybody. Like, whatever, I was nobody at 19. Didn't matter. Shriver's denial is contradicted by extensive cybersecurity data reviewed by Metro Times. The information appears in multiple verified breach databases and includes personal details such as his birth date, AOL address, and an IP address in East Lansing. And again, Shriver has frequently targeted sexual content and LGBTQ rights. In December, he called oral sex a crime against God and the natural order. again, condolences to his wife. It's the wrong way to respond to this, my dude. Again, it would be so easy to say, yeah, that is something I did. Ha ha ha. I realize it's not funny now. I am older. But instead, he's like, nope, it's fake. Totally not me. Oh my God, don't look through my browser history. I don't get why that's the response. This guy does not know how to think things through. And again, I honestly, there's so many conservatives. I don't care what they do in their private time. I don't care about their private lives. But if you're a hypocrite about this stuff, okay, then it should be fair game. If you're a politician who's making laws that say the rest of you can't do this thing that I totally do. All right, that's all. I just wanted to share that with you because that headline was glorious. Let me share it with you one more time. Michigan Republican pushing porn ban, linked to porn site. Beautiful. I am wondering if this is going to cause any repercussions for the guy. He was punished by the Republican caucus like a while back because he was so unpopular. And I don't really know if he's punished by them these days. So we'll see. I don't know if he like resigns because of embarrassment or what. He should, but it's whatever. I'm not going to feel bad for him if he does. All right, what do we got here? Any last questions? I was hacked. You called it. That is what happened. Rules for thee, but not for me. Yeah, I mean, that's Republican laws for you. They're fine. Even Republicans in Congress, they'll spike up healthcare for everyone else because they have their own insurance. So of course they don't care. In retrospect, the shirt and tie combo was a cry for help. What he needs is someone with fashion sense who might be able to help him, but you have to wonder, like, at what point does all of that become too much? Now she's touching him. He doesn't like that, or so he says. I know these bills tend to be just for publicity, but goddamn, it's scary that anyone's even able to put that together. It is. And by the way, I didn't have time to do this, but there's a bill that was introduced in Ohio, like right now, that's to promote Christianity in public schools. Like that's literally all the bill is all about. And I don't know if it'll pass, but the fact that they spent time writing it up is kind of the scary part. Or that some right-wing think tank wrote it up and they just copied and pasted it. Go Cubs, go. All right. Thank you so much for joining tonight. I'm going to go watch this game. And as always, thank you to Den for helping me out. Please go to patreon.com/Hemant to support the show or sign up at friendlyatheist.com. And by the way, for anyone still watching right now, if you are wondering, if you are interested in this, I will be speaking next weekend, next Sunday, I believe, near Orlando, Florida. I will have the details to that on friendlyatheist.com tomorrow. So if you're interested in seeing me talk about any of this stuff live and in person, I'll be in Orlando, near Orlando next weekend. But I will be back to do a show this time next week. That's it. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Thanks, Den.